Dr. Tina Scott, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you. You are a psychotherapist and a professional coach, and you specialize in coping with breakups, divorce, loss, self-esteem, and all types of other things. And I just want to shout out Deanna Williams for connecting us, because when I was going through some stuff in my life, she was like, you know what, Kay, I have somebody for you. And I reached out to you. We didn't get to sit down just yet, but she did connect me to you. So it was good to have that person that you know that you can go to when you're going through some things in your life and you need some professional help. So thank you for taking the time out.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yes. And I called on you because I wanted to have a straight no chaser conversation about relationships. And I guess the new normal that we're in right now with couples being in quarantine together, and maybe they didn't even spend more than a day together, and now they have to learn each other and like each other and love each other, and they might not even know how to do that anymore. So I kind of wanted to get your perspective on that. And I was watching Michelle Obama's Becoming the other day. Did you watch it?
Yes, loved it.
Yes, and just seeing the footage of how our former president Barack Obama treated Michelle and how she treated him, they look like they just liked each other, like genuinely liked each other and respected each other. Can you talk about that, especially about being in a relationship?
Yes, well, just piggybacking off of that, they just supported each other, right? And it didn't seem like a competition. It just seemed like we were working together. Not that I'm trying to be one up on you and one up on the other, right? What I'm seeing now with relationships is struggles. And the struggles are, you know, when we were passing each other in the house, your work schedule was different than my work schedule. We were fine cohabitating. But now that the outside world is closed and our door is closed and we can't go on the other side and we have to look at each other, it's real difficult. Many are finding that I really don't like the person that I'm looking at across from me. And I'm not saying that's everybody's story, but I can tell you a lot of people that are entering in my Zoom therapy room, they're struggling because now the question is, when this is all over, do we stay together? Should we part? What should we do, right? So now people are actually sitting in their relationships because they can't run anymore. They got to deal with those issues that was easy to avoid with a busy schedule, right? And if it wasn't a busy schedule, you know, they would make it busy doing unnecessary overtime. I'm not saying it's unnecessary, but sometimes we just load our schedule up so we don't have to come home right away. And when we come home, everyone is asleep. Right.
And also, a lot of the external things that we did to make us happy are not there anymore because we're in quarantine. Going out to the bars, the restaurants, meeting up with your friends, seeing your side piece if you have one. Social media, you know, you're not out there being a part of that anymore. Now you have to search from within and really sit still with yourself and your significant other, whether you guys are on good terms or not, but you're in this household together.
Yes.
Whether you have kids or not. So what has been some of your, I guess, experiences in dealing with that? Or what can you, I don't know, what are people doing at this stage?
But you know what? I think people are just trying to cope, right? But you said something that just stuck out to me, and I'm going to back up and then spring forward with it. You said side piece, right? In my room, a lot of the side pieces are coming in. Because the relationship that they thought was so great and so awesome, they realize they're just that, a side piece. So now they are dealing with their emotions of putting themselves in that type of position, right? Because the 20% that they were probably getting and thinking it was bigger than the 20%, now is zero. And now they feel the 0%. And now they're trying to cope with a lot of those things that they've been running from and never dealt with. So many of us like have stuff that we're dealing with, but we suppress it, right? And we keep pushing it down, pushing it down, pushing it down, pushing it down. And it's like a trash can. After a while, you can't keep pushing it down. It starts coming out somewhere. And now a lot of people's stuff is coming out and they're really not prepared to deal with it. So they're faced with dealing with depression, anxiety, and I'm going to say generalized anxiety. And the reason why I say generalized anxiety, because it's not one particular thing that's setting off the anxiety. It's a combination of many things that's making people go into a panic, and it's making people have to sit with themselves. And not only they're realizing that they may not like their mate, but many of them are realizing that they don't like who they are.
Mm.
So really helping them connect with that it is the challenge now, right? And I think this is an awesome time if we use it right and we get professional help, and it doesn't have to be me, but some type of professional help to support us through this journey. But so many feel like it'll just go away, and it won't just go away because the symptoms just coming out that's not being dealt with. So in the room, we're dealing with a lot of those things, but unfortunately, it's still many that's not coming in.
And we were talking about this before offline about people dealing with their own stuff, right?
Right.
And some of it may go back as far as childhood stuff that you haven't resolved that's coming out into your relationship. And you expect that other people, the other person that you're in a relationship with, to fix it, to fix me.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
What do you have to say about that?
Well, I think sometimes we put the responsibility for others to fix us, right? And here it is. If we don't want to sit with ourselves to fix us, what makes us think somebody else want to invest that time? Because each and every one of us is going through our own storm. And we have probably lost friendships because we felt that people weren't there for us, right? But I think the mature thing to do is, and I'm not even talking about from a counseling perspective, but the mature thing to do is remember that everybody is going through their storm, right? But people just mask it different. When you look on social media, people look like they rock stars, right? And then when you're going through your storm, you feel so inadequate. So now we're dealing with like the imposter syndrome. We're dealing with not measuring up. And it's just so many different things that we're faced with. And it's disheartening. But we just got to take a step back and really be true to ourselves and say, you know what? These are some things that I'm really not liking about myself right now. But just because I'm not liking them about myself doesn't mean I have to stay here. Because and you said a key word, happiness, right?
Yes.
We are the person that define that for ourselves, right? We define what our happiness is. And often we put it in other people. And then when they're removed, guess what? We're not happy anymore.
Yes.
So often we put our happiness on things that's not solid. So I always challenge my clients to really look at what brings them joy, because joy comes from your relationship with who you believe in, like your creator. And it's not based off of what somebody does for you. It's not based off that new car, because here it is. When we're talking about materialism making us happy, the I is never satisfied. The I will want more and more and more. And I can even take that to my own self. I remember if it was like a nice bag or even a car that I wanted, it made me feel good for about 3 or 4 months until I saw the next model come out, right?
The next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Yes. It's always chasing something, right? And unfortunately, many of us can't really bring that in because that's what we saw. And it takes for us to really examine ourselves and really identify that I'm always feeling down, I'm always feeling sad because of what I'm putting my happiness in, what I think is giving me joy, and really to evaluate that. And even as a clinician, I can't act like I always nail this stuff all the time. I fall in those traps. But one thing is, when you have tools, you got to grab for them tools, because if not, clinician or not, I could be on that couch depressed out, crying out, based off of somebody else's expectations or what I expected of somebody else. But we got to be very clear. It's not anybody else's responsibility to take care of us and make us happy, but we put it in other people's hands. And that's why it's so easily crumbled up. And that's why we're sometimes messed up, because we're looking for other people to do something for us that they really can't do, because they can't even do it for themselves.
So I want to get back to the side piece conversation and couples being in quarantine, whether you're married or not. You're around each other. This person might be living a life that you didn't know about, or maybe you did and you just dealt with it because they weren't around. But now that you're there, maybe, you're seeing the phone calls, you're seeing him dip off or her dip off, or whatever the case may be. And you also said reaching for your tools, right? So there's no black and white solution to dealing with somebody that you either know or you caught cheating on you, right? In the quarantine situation. But I guess, could you give advice to anyone that is dealing with that situation in their household, dealing with a person that they know is not being faithful to them, is lying to them without feeling like you want to burn down the house.
Yeah. No. That's
Your emotions take
real.
control.
That's real. And I wish I could easily have a 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 and get yourself together. But let me just tell you this. The one thing that I would ask whoever is in that situation is why? Why are you allowing yourself to be in this space, right? Because we feel sometimes that we don't have power to get out. Why are you allowing yourself to be subjected to someone that is dating this person, that person, and having an affair? And unfortunately, that's many reality. And often what I hear is that I'm dealing with it because we've been together for so long. We live in this nice house. If we separate, we both got to live in a neighborhood that we work so hard not to be in. So it becomes a materialistic relationship. But here it is. When we're talking about our happiness and our joy, and we seeing our mate go out and we know they're being with another person, it does something to our self-esteem. It does something to our self-confidence. And when you're finding yourself just sitting in the same space in a puddle of tears, because the first thing that many people will say, I don't care, it don't matter for me, as long as he's paying the bills, or as long as she's paying the bills, I'm good. But when we take the mask, and I keep referring to the mask, when we take that mask off and we sit by ourselves, we feel it. We feel that we don't measure up. We feel like we're not worth it. And we feel that we can't find somebody that truly loves us, and we can. And then when we start looking at from it from a religious perspective, right? And I'm not going to go down that road too far. But when we talk about it from a religious perspective, I can't think of any God that would want to see anybody suffer like that and to be mentally abused like that. And sometimes it also turns into physical abuse, right? So my thing, when you ask me, what would I say to them? I would ask them to figure out their why. Why are you allowing yourself to be in this space, right? And if you can't figure it out, sit until you figure it out. Because if you don't figure it out, can't nobody else figure it out, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you come up with it and you see that it's not good for you, ask yourself, what's next, right? And if you can't do it by yourself, I pray that you have a good support system, right?
That's important.
Because,
a support system is really important, because this has been one of the roughest years of my life. Roughest years of my life. And if I didn't have people that reached out to me because they noticed that I wasn't being my happy, positive self, they were like, "Hey, what is going on? I'm reaching out to you, up on you. I'm giving you a mental check. What is a mental health? What is going on?" Because we couldn't go to our friend's house. They couldn't come lay eyes on me. They couldn't, either get me on the phone, and I was not answering anybody. I was not responsive. So if they weren't persistent in making sure that I was good, I don't know where I would be. So that's important to have. People, whether it's your family, your friends, whoever, that you can trust and rely on.
Yeah. And it is key, because it's like they know you, right? And when you identify your support system, allow yourself to be vulnerable, because sometimes we feel like, oh, well, I can't let them see me because they see me in this light. And now if they see that I'm hurt, they may not look at me the same, right? And that's a reality. I think about in my younger days when I was struggling and I would keep things inside, and I shared it with someone and they couldn't handle it because they saw me as someone being strong all the time, right? And I was like, yo, I need you to come back because I just let everything out. I was vulnerable to you. And it was hurtful, right? But it taught me a valuable lesson that we got to test our circle before we really need them, if that makes sense, right? And then also, too, we got to make sure we're the very thing that we want our circle to be to us. We got to make sure we're giving that back out to them, right? Because sometimes we could be very selfish with our circle. We want you to be there with us. We want you to check in, make sure we're all right, send us cards. Matter of fact, be outside just waiting for me to call you. But we got to make sure we're giving that back, right? So it can be reciprocated, right? And so often it can be lopsided. And that's why we have to use our voice in our circle just to say, hey, listen, when you see that I'm not showing up, please check on me. And this is what I need from you at this time. Please don't abandon me, right? And I can honestly say, by going through the training that I went through with my whole schooling, sometimes I felt like maybe I won't say nothing because I don't want to rock the boat. But as I went through training, it's important that we say something, right? And that doesn't mean that we say something being judgmental, like you should have did. No, like, what do you need from me at this moment? How can I help you through this? And they may say, well, I don't really need anything. And you go in their house and you see like they didn't wash the dishes. You can see they didn't do their hair. They didn't take a shower. I remember one of my friends, when I went to check on her, she didn't shower. She didn't do her hair. I pushed her in the shower. I ain't no hairdresser, but I tried to do something. And you know what? It made her, it made her feel different, right? So it's the effort. And I'm a good cleaner, so I cleaned up for her, right? And that doesn't mean we got to get all in the business sometimes, because sometimes it hurts, because most of the time we're going through some level of grieving. And we don't really want to talk about it, but we just need to know that somebody cares. Is somebody still in my camp, rooting for me, cheering me on? Because I need somebody to cheer for me when I can't cheer for myself. I'm so down. I just need somebody that matters. I think about Phyllis Hyman when I was a kid, right? I used to love me some Phyllis Hyman. But I could tell in her music that something was going to happen to Phyllis Hyman, right? I could tell at a young age, right? And I thought she had the most beautiful voice. But when I read about Phyllis Hyman, she didn't believe it within herself, right? And that's why it's important that we have to figure out what is the source that can help encourage us. And it all goes back to like our self-love, our self-worth, and where we get our energy from, right? So, I mean, it's a challenge, but it's a journey that we all should be willing to take.
Would you, because I've been thinking about my story and really getting into a creative space. And from a professional standpoint, would you recommend writing stuff down?
Oh, most definitely. Yes. So journaling is so important, right? Journaling is like us throwing up our emotions on paper, right? Just getting it all out. Because when we keep it bottled in, it's like, I call it, I don't know if you, this may sound gross, but I gotta make it live. I don't know if you ever been constipated in your life, like, and you really just had to go and you couldn't, and it'll be tearing you up inside, right? And then the minute that you go, you feel so relieved. That's how it is with our emotions. When we keep all that stuff in, I call it emotional constipation. And we keep it in and we keep it in and we start feeling sick. We start crying. We don't understand why we're crying. We're not doing some of the daily activities that we normally do. We're not socializing. But the minute that we get it out, we feel better. So I challenge people to just write it out. And often when I tell people to journal, they're like, Dr. Scott, I got like 100 journal books. I don't feel like doing it. I don't feel like doing it. But then I asked them, I said, when you were doing it, how did it make you feel? I felt better. Okay, so if it helped you feel better, why don't you want to feel better? And it makes people think, because sometimes we get so used to being in our pain that it becomes our comfort zone. And our pain is really not meant for us to get comfortable in it, right? We can stand up to our pain and we can get through it. But so often it seems like it's more work to get out of it, but it's a lot of work when we stay in it, because it just keeps pouring in. So journaling is good. And if for some reason you're like, well, I don't want to journal, I tell people, just get an index card and start writing your feelings on it. And just make sure you save it somewhere. And for my men, when I say journal, they be like, I ain't doing that girl stuff. I'm like, well, won't you scribe? Won't you scribe somewhere? I don't care if it's on a napkin or something. Get those feelings out. And not only get them out, when you are mentally ready, go back and read what you got out. Because what happens is, with movement, you start seeing your progress. Because sometimes we keep moving and we're like, we were here and now we're all the way over here, and we think that we didn't do anything. So when we write things down and we write our journey down, and then we're able to go back and recollect on all those different things, we're like, wow, I didn't realize that I've come this far. Because our own mental thoughts is, we can think about all the negative things when I'm not. And one thing that I challenge people to do is to complete their I am statement. I am enough. I am strong. I am resilient. And keep saying them over and over to yourself.
I am strong. I am resilient.
Yes. Seriously, right? Because your mind is so used to telling you what you're not. And it's important that we do some selfology and study ourselves and study our awesome self to remind us who we are. And that's why I tell people to put it on index cards. When I was in college, I used to study everything on index cards, right?
Yeah.
Because it would stay in that long-term memory bank. So I tell people, put it on index cards and study your awesomeness. So when your mind starts telling you that you're not so great, you gotta say, no, I'm great. And for my Christians out there, I tell them to go to the scripture, because God tells us that we're fearfully and wonderfully made. So I have them do their I am statements, and then I get them to do 5 hope scriptures. And what that does is, in a time of trouble, when our emotions are ready to choke us, it allows us to have that space to breathe so we can keep our movement going. And it's so important when you feel like this and you're not feeling your best self that you keep some movement, because the movement will usher us out of our storm. When we sit still, like I said, in our little our pain, it just keeps coming down on us like a storm. And then after a while, it feels like we're drowning, but really, ultimately, we're not. It's just that we gave up, because if we really would stand up, we would see that we're not in no deep water. If we would just stand up and just move, we can move ourselves out of our stuff.
I'm going to go back to the documentary Michelle Obama's Becoming, and she was open and honest. It's based on her book, because during the tour, she was talking about how her and Barack went to therapy, you know, and I think in our community, the Black community, therapy has been taboo. You keep your stuff in the household. You don't say what's going on outside. You know, you don't put your business in the street. And I think that that has been something that Black people has not gravitated towards. So you just keep it in. You hold your emotions, especially for Black men.
Yes.
What do you have to say about that?
Well, I think you're on point. I think it's a huge stigma when we're talking about mental health. That's why I love the platform that we're in now, that everyone is like, go to therapy. But that's not the norm. Before, if somebody went to therapy, what's wrong with you? You crazy, you insane. It becomes all these stigmatized titles that will make people feel shameful of going to seek help. But here it is. If you were having heart problems, you broke your arm, you would go to the cardiologist, you would go to the orthopedic to make sure it's fixed. Whenever your mind is not leveling out right, it's okay to get help and go to a psychologist, a psychiatrist, so you can get back on track. But it is a stigma because of the big thing called shame. And here it is. When people come into my room, they're like, Dr. Scott, I really know everything I'm supposed to do. I'm not even sure why I'm here. I know how to fix it. Matter of fact, I could do this on my own, right? So I always have them share what they did, because here it is. We have great tools. Like when I hang up my pictures, right? You're supposed to use a hammer. I use all the wrong tools. And that's why I be all jacked up and they fall down, right? So we have tools, but we just need somebody to work with us so we can grab the right tools, because sometimes we pull the wrong ones. So that's where therapy comes in. It's not saying that you're not great and you don't have greatness. We're just trying to make sure you tap into your greatness and you allow it to manifest itself in this thing called life, because too often the negativity, we are what we think. So when you come into therapy, it allows us to help you rewire some of those thought process. And in my room, I use a lot of cognitive behavior therapy. And what that is I challenge what my clients are thinking so they can behave differently, right? Because if we don't address the central part of us,
people have been behaving in a certain way for, I don't know, maybe 30 years, 35 years, 40 years, 50 years of their life. It's hard to change behavior.
Yes, it is. Change is very hard for many because we get used to certain things. We get used to our routine. But when you realize things are not working for you, then you have to change. Just like with this whole pandemic, right? My practice, I did a little bit of telemedicine, right? And I had to change my entire platform, and I'm still working on it. And the change was not easy, right? But I know it's benefits in the change. So we have to not focus on the hard work of it, but we got to look at the reward, and the reward is coming, because ultimately we want to continue being our best self. And therapy helps us become like our best self. And stomping out the stigma is something that I try to do on a daily basis, so people can just feel comfortable coming in the room. Don't worry about what other people think, because 9 times out of 10, they going to therapy somewhere and they just not telling you, right? You'll be surprised. And with so many people that are in the limelight committing suicide, it's waking up. If people are being awakened, and it's necessary, right? So I appreciate this space. I appreciate people that are setting up platforms to say, hey, it's okay to get therapy. And unfortunately, sometimes your everyday person can't get that message out. But when we have people that are in the limelight, it helps people to realize it's normal, right? Because people bounce back and forth from like a therapist, a coach, whatever term really fits the fad and the season. And I'm just praying, because therapy was always around, even before this. And I'm just praying, even when this go, people will see the value and see how easily accessible getting therapy is.
I am enough.
Yes.
We have to keep on repeating that we got to have these mantras and these self-affirmations. I'm going to wake up in the morning. I'm going to utilize these tools to reaffirm that.
Yes. And, even sitting in your space and doing like meditation, right? Just like when you wake up in the morning, just sit yourself in a chair and let your feet be flat, let your arms just hang down, and just focusing on like how you're breathing, right? Taking some long breaths in and breathe them out. And I tell my client, on that out breath, affirm yourself. I am amazing. I am beautiful. I can get through this, right? And it's so important that we start our day off like that, because we come up with so many different oppositions. And even in our Zoom rooms, many of us had oppositions even when we went into our workplaces, right? It didn't change how those environments are. We are up against oppositions. I remember when I was a senior healthcare executive, I came up with oppositions, being an African-American female in a position of power, right? I came up against oppositions, and people don't realize, they see you in these positions, but they don't see all the stuff that you got to deal with, right? So it's important that we get ourselves, we equip ourselves and shield ourselves before we even go out there. And even though we're still in our space, when we get on those Zoom rooms, we're still dealing with a lot of stuff. And our mind has to be right, because if not, the battle is already over, right? We lose. But if we get our mind right, we can win. And I always tell people, this is so important. Wherever you get your strength from, wherever you get your power from, tap into that in the morning. If you pray, pray. If you read scriptures, do it in the morning so you can be ready for what comes up against you. So when people are laying you out, saying mean things that are not so nice, you like sitting there smiling like, yeah, I don't know what's going on with them, but let me keep it moving. Your mind is not and your mind is not receiving what they're saying to you. So it's important. And we smile when we say this, but I remember when I had to interview some people for when I was a part of Uniquely You Summit, like many, many years ago. And I remember when the people that was going to work with our young ladies, I had to ask them their I am statement. And I remember one young lady was like, I am resilient, right? And her whole posture did not say that she was resilient. I said, well, tell me what that means. And she said, I don't know. And then she just broke down and cried, right? So then we talked about what resilient means, being able to bounce back from hard times and difficult times. And she said, I want to be that. And I said, that's the first step. So often we have these I am statements and we don't really fully understand what they mean. Look it up, because it can be your I am statement. And it's so important because it has power in it, because we hear what we're not, right? Whether it came from childhood, whether it came from people making fun of you in school, whether it came from rejection, abandonment issues, whatever it might be, whatever that is, we can redefine it right here and right now. It doesn't mean that that has to be our legacy, how we have to continue on with our life. We can change and make a difference in our life so we can move forward different. But often we get stuck in that pain, and we need good people to help us get through it.
I am a phoenix. We will rise.
Yes. And say it just like that, with all that in there, all that attitude in there. Right? Don't say it weak. You gotta say it like from the bottom of your toes and let it come all the way out and roar it, right?
Wow, this has been a really uplifting conversation, straight no chaser conversation, just about what's going on, our mental health. You gave us some tools. I appreciate that. If someone wanted to reach out to you for a therapy session, how can they contact you?
Sure, they can just call me directly at 215-519-2531. They can find my website too, drtinascottlpc.com. Yeah.
Thank you for your time. And do you have any parting words?
No, I appreciate this. I like this real conversation because I think it's necessary. Because I think it allows the space for many to heal. So I appreciate you for making this platform possible because it's needed, it's necessary, and I know it will change somebody's life. Just one thing will make a difference. So I appreciate it.
And as a woman of color, I think that it's important to have more women of color in the therapy space so that we have
Yes.
someone that looks like us, that go through the same experience in being a Black woman in America
Yes.
that we can talk to, because that was one of my, I'm not going to lie, one of my issues with going to therapy. I'm like, well, how can somebody tell me about myself, try to help me understand myself if they don't experience the stuff that I've gone through? You know,
Right.
basic stuff, and being Black is an experience within itself. Being a
Yes.
woman is an experience within itself. And
Yes.
then it's kind of like
Yes.
combine those two is very unique. So
Right.
it's important to have people that look like you in that space. So thank you for doing what
Yes.
you're doing.
Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome.